Hi everyone, my name's Lee Harris, and today I'm joined by Markus Buchheit from the AfD party, who's also a member of the European Parliament since 2019. Markus is a trained political scientist and legal advisor who joined the AfD in 2016. He's part of the Europe of Sovereign Nations group, where he serves on key committees like international trade, industry, and energy. Now, why would you as a UK listener care about this interview? Well, Germans are battling the same frustrations we face here in the UK: uncontrolled mass migration, illegal migration, woke ideologies infiltrating our institutions, the erosion of traditional values, free speech under attack, two-tier justice, a stagnant economy, and a cost of living crisis that are hitting ordinary folk in the pocket. Now, AfD are surging in the polls, often leading the pack, currently on track to potentially become Germany's largest party at the 2029 election. So us Brits have a lot of shared battles with the German people, and I think it'd be fascinating to find out A, what's happening in Germany, and B, what Markus actually thinks of what's happening in the UK. So thank you very much for joining me today, Markus. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. And it's nice to have some shared battles at times, isn't it? The Brits and the Germans.
Absolutely. What is it? What is it? They say a problem aired is a problem shared, as
Yeah.
you say. But it's nice, honestly. This is why I think this interview is going to be interesting, because there are some very close parallels to what's happening, not just in the UK, across Europe, and arguably over in America as well. That the entire West is having a bit of a problem at the moment, and it is going to be fascinating to listen to you to find out what's happening over in Germany, and of course the rise of the AfD do seem to have parallels with the rise of the Reform Party in the UK. So let's start off with the first question. So Brits in the UK may well think of the AfD as kind of Germans' answer to Reform UK. Polls like the INSA in early October show you at 26%, and you even topping mainstream parties like the CDU and the CSU. So tell me a little bit about yourself and give a brief history of the AfD and what's propelling this meteoric rise.
Technically, Reform UK came after us, firstly, to stuff like that. But
True.
well, I was part of the CDU before. There used to be Conservative Party, and maybe you remember people. You remember Thatcher, and then you may remember Helmut Kohl as a German chancellor. He used to be part of the CDU before. You had in the CSU in Bavaria, particularly. That's the offspin that is leading Bavaria since I think more or less 60 years now, uninterruptedly. They're governing Bavaria, and you had people like Franz Josef Strauss. Maybe you heard that name once. Quite important for us as conservative people. Now, I used to be a member there and was working in the party headquarters even in Munich in 2013, which was a combined electional campaign on a federal level, so for the Bundestag in Berlin and for the regional level at Munich and Bavaria. And I was part of a team working, how to say that? We were observing our enemies, our political enemies, and one political enemy that came up in 2013 was, funny enough, the AfD, and I was part of exactly that team. So I had to monitor the AfD and what they were doing and how their party program was made up and stuff. And well, funny enough, 2 years later, I left the CSU and became member of the AfD then. Why that? Because already by 2013, you could see that the CSU, as well as the CDU, was no longer a conservative party. There was no protection of the family in there. There was no protection of the religion in there, or even considering religious attributes and moral standards that were for so many decades shaping this party. That had completely vanished. It was gone as soon as Mrs. Merkel came up. And prior to the migration crisis in 2015, you already had trouble, let's say, obligatory military service, for example, that had already disappeared. It was no longer there. It was the CSU and CDU who did that. We didn't have nuclear power plants anymore. We had the Fukushima event in Japan. You remember there was a tsunami. I
Yes.
never
Yeah.
heard about a tsunami in Germany. Nonetheless, we wanted to abolish our nuclear power plants in
Ludicrous.
2011.
Yeah.
And it was a decision that was taken within weeks. So you have to imagine that. So you've got a grid in Germany that is made up by I don't know how many hundreds of power plants. And from one day to another, you take the decision to take simply these, I think it was 16 at the time, nuclear power plants out. So that couldn't work. And you saw it already in 2013. We had gay marriage coming out. We had all these things. If I asked you if you were a left-wing politician now, if there was any left-wing project when you finished school, I don't know when you finished school, let's say 2000 or something, you had the legalization of marijuana, perhaps. You had gay marriage. You had no longer obligatory military service. You had, I don't know what, open border politics. I don't know what crazy things came to the mind of young people back then. But each single one of these left-wing projects came true then in the end. And so we woke up suddenly in a completely lefty country. And there was no conservative party there to rescue the country. And it was pure madness already in 2013. I mean, now we start feeling the consequences, the true consequences of all that. And well, that's why I left the CSU and became member of the AfD. Firstly, not as a member, as an ordinary
That,
member.
that's genu- that's genuinely fascinating because honestly, that follows a very similar path as myself, and not just me, the entire country. To be brutally honest, I was a conservative. I was a member of the Conservative Party
I hope you
for
still are. I still am,
no,
huh?
no. I've left the Conservative Party.
No, I
I've
don't mean that. I mean from your thinking, you're still a conservative
oh,
person, I hope.
absolutely, yeah, that's the point. My views have not changed.
Yeah.
It's the Conservative Party that changed over many years, to be brutally honest. And we felt over here, not just me, that a lot of people who voted Conservative, which is why they're, by the way, doing so appalling in polls right now, is because people just do not believe that they are Conservative anymore. I mean, the last Prime Minister that I had any respect for, and that respect has now gone, was for Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson was a lefty. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The guy is very pro net zero, pro making our borders porous and opening up the borders to low skilled migration from across the globe, more so from outside the European Union now than inside. But yeah, we very similar story. The electorate who would have voted Conservative in the UK no longer believe that the Conservative Party is conservative, and that is why reform was created. Because it filled that void of having proper traditional conservative values.
I think you might even go. I hope I don't expand that question up too much, but you might make it one level deeper because the efficiency of a political system is made up by its capacity to solve problems. Now, do these parties still solve problems? No, they permanently redefine problems. They suddenly say, no, we need to go towards certain, how do you call that, marginalized groups, and we need to do that particular politics. We need to go for, yeah, all these climate goals and environmental issues, Greta Thunberg style and stuff. So they make
Yeah,
up real problems, but they were not able to solve the real problems anymore. And I think that is the basic reason, actually, why we come up now as parties, because we are real alternatives. And they
yeah.
know they have no other alternatives. I mean, that's a burden for us as politicians as well, because and that is Reform UK as well as the AfD, we're the last way out for our societies.
Yeah, it seems that common sense politics vanished a long time ago. And it feels to a lot of people in the UK, I don't want to try and speak on behalf of the entire country, but I can speak on behalf of the people that I speak to. And it just feels like there is no common sense left. There are some good people. There are some good people still in the Conservative Party, but they are massively outnumbered by Tory wets, as we call them, essentially Liberal Democrats, who will
Yeah.
never, ever, ever allow a leader to implement conservative policies. They just won't allow it. And that is the frustration that I had, is that and the lies. I mean, I don't know if you had the same over here, but we were just basically told lies for 2 decades by both Labour Party and a Conservative Party that said that they were going to reduce immigration. I mean, it's one point, but it's probably one of the most important points. Boris Johnson told us on the 2019 election that he was going to lower the overall numbers, and it's exploded. We had almost 1 million people come in within 2024, 2025. It's a complete lie.
Well, the,
And
the
that,
real politics of lies now came up here in Germany with Mr. Merz in particular, with our new chancellor, or so to speak, new chancellor. The guys before that didn't even, they didn't even do the effort to lie to us. But now
yeah, they just
this
don't
guy,
care now.
this guy's at least lying. But you know how it is. I mean, the enemy of the good guy is the guy with the good intentions. I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. Well, let's move on to keep this running. So there's something that's very interesting to me, and I probably think because of what's happening in the UK at the moment with the clampdown on free speech, with with an overreaching authoritarian Labour government in power. I wouldn't put something like this past them, but the German establishment has floated banning the AfD after labelling it extremist unbelievably in May 2025 through the courts. It's been paused, I understand, because you are
Correct.
challenging this, rightly so. So it does sound a little bit like what's happening in the UK with authoritarian governments, but I do know that there is a unique set up in Germany following what happened of the Second World War, and there are certain things put in place to kind of protect that from happening again. But can you tell the UK audience what this means, what you're currently doing about it, and can they actually ban the AfD?
Well, let's say these parties, I mean, is okay. We have a domestic secret service in Germany, which is the Verfassungsschutz. So we have that on two levels. That is on federal level, we have a Bundesverfassungsschutz, and each of the Länder in Germany also has its own Verfassungsschutz, its own domestic secret service. Now, these guys and the whole Secret Service, no matter on which level, is a political institution. So these guys are put into power, into the place, into the positions they're working at by politicians. So typically by a Minister of the Interior, and they follow his or her orders. And that is the core of the whole problem. This is not a real independent institution, if you want, that is really meant to protect the constitution, because that's what the name says in German. That's a hoax. No, these guys try to keep their friends in power and try to defeat the political
So it's
enemy.
political.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And then you come to the following conclusion in the end. We are at the end game now. In the end games, you might say, of our societies, but at least the guys in those parties are on their own end game, because they made their parties family businesses in the end. You know, they created think tanks around the government. They employ experts there. They created maybe also new ministries where they put their own incompetent guys in and stuff. And they know that if we come to power, we're gonna abolish all that. We're gonna take their friends out of there. We're gonna take the family members out of there. The guys who didn't study, who didn't do anything at all, who have got no qualification to be in the position they are in right now. So what they're gonna do now? Firstly, they tried it with the domestic secret service, and they came up with a documentation covering, I think, 1,100 pages, which was utter bullshit. It was, oh, sorry, now I said it even. Please, you may cut that
No,
out.
you
But
you speak freely. We're on my podcast. You say what you
yeah,
like.
yeah, because you told me before. So, um, so you had 1,100 pages of Facebook images, of Twitter posts taken from the context, out of the context and stuff, and they tried to put us into the worst possible light they could even possibly find. And well, obviously they got what they wanted. And there was Mrs. Nancy Faeser, member of the former government here. On her last day at service, she was able to come up with this conclusion that my party, that the AfD, is anti-constitutional and is a horrible party and a threat to society. Now, I think it's not a threat to society, it's a threat to those parties. And
Yeah.
you may ask yourself if that is really democratic or not, what is happening right now in Germany. But nonetheless, we're in an endgame here, and I'm convinced they are using all means they have, all possibilities they have to get rid of us.
I,
You may get rid of us, but you won't get rid of our opinions, you know?
Well, from my experience in the UK, I know this is obviously completely separate to what's happening in Germany. That's the feeling I would have if I was a German AfD voter, because in the UK, so for example, Nigel Farage and Reform Party just released. We may touch on this in a bit, so I won't go into too much detail. But they've just released or announced a quite a strong immigration policy. And the immediate reaction from the Labour Party, well, basically all other parties, including the Conservatives to a point, have essentially called Nigel Farage racist. And they've now that was quite immediate. It was quite full throated. They did not hold back on basically describing Nigel Farage and Reform voters, by the way,
Yeah.
as essentially racist and stuff. Now, if we had something in our constitution like the Germans do, where you have this facility to label a political party, democratically elected political party, as far right extremists, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that that would happen in the UK. They would rush to do that in the UK.
Yeah.
The only people in, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only people that get to decide who to vote for and who not to vote for are the German people. Am I right?
Well, in our opinion, it is, in yours and mine. Yeah, but I mean, you have a
The left aren't
certain.
very good at democracy, are they?
Correctly so. What they have in mind is like a guided democracy, no? Where you
Yeah.
might help them what to vote for and what media to consume and stuff. I don't want to go too far now, but you also had Meloni, for example, in Italy, who was called a fascist in the beginning. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that.
she was
I
called
mean,
that here as well. Yeah,
yeah.
far right fascist.
So I don't care about that anymore. No, it's really not important for me. You might call me whatever you want. I mean, history will judge, not those guys who are judging me right now.
Is it? I mean, this is quite an important question. How are the German people taking it? Because my assumption would be, if I try and imagine that happened to say reform, for example, in the UK, I think it would boost them in the polls. I actually do think it would, because of the way that the public, there's so much distrust in the system. The British people do not trust politicians. They do not trust the media. I just have a feeling if something like that did happen here, the British people, it would actually boost them in the polls. How are the German people taking this news? What's the polling like on
It
this?
actually it did. I'm not quite sure to what extent it did, but it helped us really to search a little bit in the polls. But first of all, where do they get the information from? And for a big part in Germany, at least, it's still the TV, especially the elder generation. They're watching TV, they're listening to radio, and if you want it or not, you get into contact with public media. You know, the guys you need to pay 18, I think it's now 18 euros 36 cents per month. I need to pay for people who hate me, who exclude me from TV shows and stuff. I need to pay them in order to keep up that propaganda. And now it didn't come completely unprepared today. So I was just looking to the last recent poll there. How many people are afraid of expressing their own opinion, their own honest opinion publicly? And it's 44% in Germany right now.
Wow.
46% are not afraid. 46, a minority is not afraid to express their own opinion. It's crazy. I mean,
It is. It is crazy. That's well, say very similar. We're going through a very similar thing here in the UK, where Keir Starmer is literally imprisoning people for Facebook posts and
yeah.
writing things on Twitter. I don't know if is the same thing happening in Germany.
And 25% believe they are neutrally informed by public media. 25%. Media services they pay for each month, they have to pay for that. And I don't know if there were similar polls in or investigations there in Moscow in 1988 or something, but I guess you might end up with similar numbers, you know? That
True.
shows you
Yeah.
everything, huh?
As it happens, I understand it. I think this is accurate. Is that Russia imprisons less people for speech than the UK? The
I'm sure.
UK, it's absolutely crazy. You know, they call the Reform Party racist and that, but it's literally the incumbent, the Labour Party. And to be fair, I'm not going to let the Conservatives off the hook either.
No.
Now, the Conservatives were in power over in the UK for 14 years. This didn't happen overnight. In Germany, you have the CDU. For the UK audience, think our Conservatives. They're accused, like our Conservative Party, of caving to left-leaning socialists and Greens on pretty much everything from migration to climate. You know, how is this sellout creating openings from the AfD, and how does that mirror the kind of Tory betrayal, for example, on immigration and energy and climate policy?
Well, you had a time, say 10, 12 years ago, it became apparent, but you had a time when suddenly politicians came to power that were more looking into the newspaper in the morning to see how what concerns the public right away. It was, for example, Angela Merkel was putting up the Bild Zeitung, which is Germany's biggest newspaper, each morning, and she was famous for looking into the public opinion. So what was, what are they keen on covering that day and stuff? And suddenly at a certain point, there was Greta Thunberg coming up, Fridays for Future, and all that stuff. That was in, if I remember correctly, 2018 or 2019. And I'm in Strasbourg right now, so Greta Thunberg was here. These guys, now they want to forget it, with the whole Israel problem and stuff. Now they want to forget that they all wanted to meet and have selfies with Greta Thunberg, but I will not forget it. Manfred Weber and Ursula von der Leyen and all these guys, They were they were waiting even to get selfies with Greta Thunberg. Now they don't want to hear it anymore. So they suddenly realized that the Green Deal was a big thing. They called the Green Deal Man on the Moon, the European Man on the Moon project. We suddenly need to get carbon neutral by 2050 and stuff. We need to destroy our automotive industry. We need to destroy our industry as a whole. They don't call it that way, however. They called it we need uh, to improve our industry, to change it, to make it become greener, because we have a global responsibility here to stop global warming. Now you have the Russians, by the way. Now we have new headlines, but that was the headlines at the time, and it was the Greens who came up with that. Obviously, traditionally already, it was the socialists jumping onto that train. Socialists formally protected the workers and the companies and the car producers and all that stuff, and suddenly they forgot about all that. And the CDU was jumping onto that train and said, "Now we need to rescue the planet." I don't know what psychological problem Germans have, that they permanently see global problems and they want to educate the whole world and want to tell everyone how to behave. I mean, for this utter arrogance is something you attribute typically to other countries, not to the Germans.
Mhm.
But I can tell you, I see it more and more. It's a typical German phenomenon. And so now we say, okay, let's save the planet and let's destroy our own country. Because what these guys didn't have in mind, I had the numbers already in 2019, that we would lose around 200,000 to 400,000 jobs only in the automotive sector in Germany if we continue with the abolishing internal combustion engines by 2035. By the way, we are already there. We have already destroyed more than 200,000 jobs in that sector. And I'm not talking about jobs at McDonald's, where you need to turn burgers and stuff. These guys, they earned a lot of money. They were trained well. They had a good education. And they were really the backbone of our whole industrial matrix, if you want, here, because Daimler-Benz, BMW, and all these companies.
Best car makers in the world.
Are you allowed to say that?
Were.
Thank you. But well, so you had secondary effects to the whole economy in Germany, and this is what these guys didn't understand. You can't simply destroy the engine, it was by suddenly changing towards an electrical engine, because then you're going to destroy all the suppliers as well. And we see these effects now. Just talking about the automotive industry, because you have it in many other industries as well. Now, by putting a tax into carbon dioxide, for example, that makes everything more expensive in Germany. And so they jumped into the train and they still don't want to get off from it. And that's horrible. And this is something I accuse the Conservative Party, maybe even more of than of migration, because migration, that is something that could have been expected before. But to destroy really the whole industry, to destroy a whole country, that attacks us on two fronts. Because first of all, you got the migration problem and the security problem. And secondarily, you got, well, in the future, the income problem. Because who's going to pay for all that mess?
Yeah. I mean, just thinking out loud, I mean, in the UK, you very much described what happened to our Conservative Party. Boris Johnson, his green credentials were, he was very proud of them. It wasn't because we were going through Brexit at the time. Everything was focused on Brexit, completely focused on Brexit. And no one really cared too much about this waffly net zero nonsense and hitting these targets. And of course, now Brexit's kind of settled down and we've moved on a little bit. We are starting to see now a change in mindset from our main political parties. And I would argue this has been led by the Reform Party. But we now have
Yeah.
a Conservative Party that is going to scrap net zero. We have, so they say. I don't believe them, but this is kind of what they say. But don't forget, this is the same Conservative Party that
They put it in
literally
there, yeah,
months ago,
obviously. Yeah.
literally months ago, set the 2030 target. They wanted to compete with the Labour Party on who could. It was all complete rubbish. Bollocks is the right word for it.
Yeah.
And now we've seen this complete change because they've seen the polls, right? So they've seen how well Reform are just dominating in the polls, especially on issues like net zero. Are you saying that in Germany you haven't reached the stage yet where the Conservative Party, is it because they're still in power or they're power sharing with the socialists? It is why have they not changed tack on this?
I don't understand that either. I mean, you got certain politicians from the CDU, for example, who are telling us that they want to get rid of that 2035 aim and also of the carbon neutrality by 2050. I heard these. So but nonetheless, they are not powerful enough in their party. Why that is, I can't really explain to you. I suppose it is because you still get those in power there in the CDU who want to go together with the Greens and with the socialists, who still haven't accepted that if you really want to change the country, if you want to make this country a better place, safer place, and economically also a safer place, you need to work with us. But they don't want it. We
I
haven't
was
talked about the firewall yet, but that's the basic result of all that, no?
I was absolutely shocked when I was doing a little bit of research last night to find out your energy bills are higher than those in the UK. In certain areas. Is that true? I mean, I couldn't believe what I was reading because we've been told we have pretty much the highest which we do. We know we do. We have some of the highest electricity costs in the world. The Reform Party have been very, very good at explaining the financial cost, the hit to the
Yes.
taxpayer in their energy bill. And I think that that has done a lot to change people's minds, including the Conservative Party. Is it not? Is that message not getting through to the German people that if you cancel net zero, if you cancel these climate targets, and you organically reduce carbon rather than forcing it in, it's going to make them worse off. They're going to be poorer.
There was a time in the past when I honestly believed that as soon as people would see in their own wallets, on their own bank accounts, the results of all that mess, that they would change their minds. And when I say people, I mean the voters. But that hasn't happened to a great extent. I
Is there
don't
is there
get.
an east-west split on this? Is that in terms of the population, the electorate in
Yeah,
Germany?
yeah, surely, surely. There, on our behalf here, we see a big, big difference there. Yeah, right now, last week I've been to the northeast of Germany, and there we were around 40%. So that's all good. But that is a very different, very interesting question. I'm thinking a lot about that one because these guys they didn't have our great capitalist system for I think 50 years or something until the reunification in 1989. I don't know exactly why, but you see these differences. Maybe also, and that's what the guys, because I was talking to many of there, I talked to them and asked them, why are you more sensible to these changes in society when I talk about freedom of speech, for example, about the freedom of media? And they told me it was because we didn't have it for so long. So we are very aware of people who want to change freedom of speech, who want to cut down on our freedoms, want to cut down on freedom of media. And they've got much better antennas there in the East than we have in the West. In the West, we already get accustomed to all that. But different question. Um, no, I think for many, many years he was saying industry is dirty. You know, you didn't want chimneys that expelled smoke there and stuff. You had the idea that we would all change into a service society very quickly. Nobody real. Do you call that a service society in English? Sorry, when
No,
you're not
yeah,
no
that
longer.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't realize in all these funny images, colorful images, that that means that many, many people are working in burger shops, at kebab stores, in mobile phone stores and stuff. It's not people who suddenly earn 100,000 euros a year because they're doing, I don't know, bank stuff. That's not going to happen in such society. You need a healthy, especially Germany needs a healthy industry. By the way, an industry that has developed and grown not only over 50 or 60 years, but over more than 100, like in the UK. There was
Mm,
an established system there that was built up by us, by the previous generation, by our fathers, grandfathers, and their fathers before. It's not us to destroy all that system right now because we say, no, no, it's no longer fit for what we need, because now we suddenly want to change the world. Now I'm here as a politician and I have a working country, and that country works pretty well. Pretty well. It's pretty perfect. You know, you've got a working industry, you've got your taxes coming in, you've got a working army there, the society is safe. I can send my little girl with 16 years in the evening to the discotheque, pick her up at 12 o'clock or something. She doesn't need to be afraid to be stepped on the street. And now I come and I say, no, I want to change everything. And that is the classical left wing thinking. And you know what happens afterwards? Afterwards, they come and say, oh, sorry, we didn't want that. I'm very sorry, we didn't want that result. Yeah, I could have told you in the first place that it
yeah, if they
doesn't work.
listen.
Just listen. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, that's actually a nice segue onto. I want to talk about something close to my heart, and that's the culture wars and the shifting demographics across both of our nations. And in one of your recent X posts, you call out the EU's LGBTIQ plus strategy as an unchecked ideological plan, of which I completely agree with you on, by the way.
Yeah.
I have a young daughter who's at school, and this terrifies me. Forcing gender self ID on kids. For UK listeners, seeing similar school debates here. How's this kind of Brussels meddling threatening German traditions and culture within your education system, institutions, and what's the AfD's game plan on this?
Oh, it goes even further. I mean, first, the lefties, what did they want to do? They wanted to destroy everything, every pillar of society. So it started with the churches, obviously. If you look now at the Protestant church in Germany, it's a mess. You think you're at the Green Party, you don't even need to go there anymore. It's crazy. So they went against the churches. Then they went into the universities and then into our educational system. Then they tried to destroy the now the army's coming up again. Suddenly the Greens are super in favor of the army. Something, yeah. Okay, I have some sympathies for it, but not by these guys. So they tried to destroy everything, and then they destroyed the whole country. But now it goes against the human being. It's no longer just a country. It was destroying the family in the first place. Now a family suddenly father daughter, I don't know, or non-binary, or I don't know what. So they went against the families, and now it goes against your own identity. And I think it has something diabolic to it, and that is very crazy to see that. I mean, these guys, they are for destruction and for total destruction. They don't stop where Hitler and the National Socialists stopped. These guys do not stop. They go further and further. There is no stopping them, except if we do something. But if that is the theological question in the end, where you say these guys never accepted God and that we are men and women and that we are created equal and that we are there together in order to have children, or if it is a psychological problem that they all share, I can't tell you. I just see it. And I see they have a huge will of destruction. And that wouldn't say it makes me afraid, but that is something to always consider when you talk to these guys. One more example, if you allow me, still to go back to the economic question from before, because we had a green minister of economy before, which was Mr. Habeck. And Mr. Habeck wanted to get rid, apart from getting rid of the nuclear power plants, from gas-driven power plants. No, because we were dependent 70% on Russian gas and stuff, and he wanted to get rid of this. And he said, I'm going to destroy the. Now they don't talk about it anymore, but I remember him. He said, we're going to destroy those power plants and we're going to take out all the pipelines as well in Germany. We were talking about destructions in the billions, built up by people, by previous generations, which this guy dares himself to even think about to destroy everything. And there directly, you have parallels to April 1945 in Berlin, when there were people who said, let's destroy the whole country because, yeah, it doesn't give us anything anymore. They are too weak. We want to destroy them. It was the National Socialists who had similar ideas. And then suddenly you see a lot of parallels because you started with that today. We are called the fascists. We are called the bad guys. No, if I see the parallels, if I see the effects of their work, then I think we're on the good side this time, and those guys are on the bad side.
It's so similar to what's happening over in the UK. We for years our institutions have been under attack from a left wing ideology. It's the whole Marxist walk, march through the institutions,
Exactly.
and
Yes.
they've been incredibly successful at it. And of course, if
Yeah.
you dare to talk out about stop sexualizing our children, for example, in schools, you're the one who's called a fascist, you're the one who's called intolerant. But I really don't see it that way, especially since I've become a dad. It's one of the most important things to
Yeah.
me, that my daughter grows up in a healthy environment with good solid debate, and not have to sit through drag queen hour or be told that there's 200 genders.
It's not only
And
that. I mean, it's this over sexualization. I mean, I just don't want it. I mean, we're talking about, I don't know how old your kid is, but my daughter is now 2.5 years old.
9.
Yeah, mine is still a bit younger, but I just don't want her to get in contact with that stuff. I mean, these are cases for psychologists, not for the public.
In the AfD's manifesto, you reject multiculturalism, as do I, and many sensible people here in the UK. Much like Reform, there is a growing belief that multiculturalism has failed culturally, economically, socially. How's that stance resonating in Germany? and could it inspire kind of cross-channel populist wave against the left? Are you feeling a pickup from people in Germany and potential AfD voters?
Oh, clearly, because now suddenly we're confronted with studies who say we have to pay up to thousands of, I think, I don't know the number, was 1,500 billion euros here in the next 20 years, and only to cope with the current situation ongoing in Germany. So, okay, we got two things here. Even if I wanted to be somebody in favor of a multicultural society, I would still need control of some sort. These guys, they don't have control, but they have that aim. You called it utopia before, which is this beautiful multicultural society where you have different cultures, you hear different languages, you have got the mosque standing next to the church and stuff. Won't happen.
No.
Multicultural society is just an interim stage until you have a new dominant culture in a certain place. Basta, that's it. And I mean, you've seen it with people from certain groups trying to rule the streets in certain cities in England and Great Britain. And we see
Yeah.
exactly the same effects in Germany as well. Where they go first is surely into the social system. So our social system will, at a certain point, I think it's quite close, just cease working because we can't pay for it anymore. You know, get a lot of guys coming here. I don't blame them. I mean, if I give them the opportunity to go to good doctors and to get their
Oh,
teeth
yeah.
fixed, I don't know what. I mean,
You
if
can't blame them. No.
if I want a working social system, a working welfare system, I need borders. I need to accept the fact that I'm paying for this system. My parents have paid, my grandparents have paid into it. It is a system of, if you want, a national system of solidarity. And you cannot have people in there who only come in order to take. You need to contribute. And if you
A
don't
hundred
contribute, you
percent.
have to leave. And therefore, I believe as well on a cultural scale that we make a big mistake if you really believe that multiculturalism works. I do not believe that a school class is able to teach my child anything if I've got 90% people in there who don't speak my language. If I want to teach her my language, if I want to teach her German. You know, that just doesn't work. I cannot have 90% foreigners in there who need to learn the language by themselves. And this is something we see now. I mean, firstly, we saw it in certain bigger cities. Now we see it even in the smaller cities. And I think that's a big problem in the smaller cities as well. Because in the beginning, on the countryside in Bavaria, in rural Bavaria, where I come from, they said, that's a problem of Berlin, you know, these foreigners there. Or let's speak about the elephant in the room, the big amount of Muslim influx during the last 10 to 15 years. That's a problem of Berlin and of Düsseldorf and Cologne and stuff. Fuck, and they came closer. Then it was already the next bigger city. It was already Nuremberg with 500,000 inhabitants. And then it went down. And suddenly you saw it down to the smallest village in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, where you suddenly had refugees in villages that had 500 inhabitants. I mean, yeah, it will touch you if you don't act as a citizen, as a voter. If you don't do something against it, sooner or later you have it in your little village. There is no space of peace and of freedom anymore in this country if people don't start to act.
I completely agree with you. And actually, funny enough, we have a very, very recent example of it over here in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of a chap called Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick is a Conservative member of Parliament, and he recently went to a place in Birmingham in the UK, and he
I
was
heard too
recalled.
many stories about Birmingham.
Yeah, probably most of them not particularly great. But it was quite interesting how this unfolded. He was secretly recorded saying that he didn't see another white face in Birmingham. Now he went on to say he wants to live in a society that he didn't use the word multicultural, but he wanted to live in a society where we quite happily live alongside each other, and we don't have these kind of enclaves of people who essentially are taking over a certain part of our country. And what was quite interesting about this is Robert Jenrick was completely slated, called a racist by all of the mainstream media. And then literally a few days later, we had a situation where the Maccabi Tel Aviv football fans were due to play at Aston Villa in Birmingham. And it just so happened that the Muslim population of Birmingham, one of their MPs, an independent MP, started a petition to ban
Unbelievable.
the Jewish fans coming. Now, they're trying to make out that they were banning the Jewish fans because of safety concerns.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
everyone
Even
everyone
that
knows
would be
that's nonsense.
hilarious, huh?
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. Everyone knows that the reason why the Jewish fans won't be allowed to come to Birmingham is because they have a very, very high population of Muslims who apparently don't like Jews, and that's basically how it's coming across. It's literally playing out in front of people's eyes now, and it just
Yeah,
makes me wonder. It just makes me wonder how long this narrative of multiculturalism, diversity is our strength. In the UK, it is
yeah,
definitely
exactly.
losing its value. Put it that way.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, because I'm in Strasbourg right now, here inside the European Parliament, I mean, these phrases they haunt me my whole day. Diversity is our strength and stuff. It's nonsense, and people know it,
Completely.
But I don't know if they just can't accept their errors, and that goes on a personal level for simple people who say, "I've been following the Green Party for 20 years. They made a big mistake there. I see that my society, that my street, that my city is changing, but nonetheless, I can't accept that I made a mistake." I think that's a big issue for politicians, especially. I mean,
Well,
where?
they can't admit they cannot admit they made a mistake because if they do, their entire ideology falls apart. Certainly in the UK, we're seeing lots of examples of British people not being allowed or English people not being allowed to be proud to be English. I don't know if you've heard about our
Yeah,
flagging
surely,
camp.
obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
we've had a flagging campaign where patriotic Brits have been. I do right outside my house right now is a massive England flag hanging from my house, and I'm
very nice.
very proud to have it there. But we've been called racists and nationalists because we are the only group of people in our own country who are not allowed to be proud to be British. Is that the same in Germany?
Obviously, we just had recently a case, I think it was this morning. I don't know who did it. Congratulations to the guys who did it, but they flagged a whole village or how a whole city with hundreds of
Fantastic.
German flags. And obviously, our domestic secret service is going against these guys as well. I wish them good
You're
luck to.
joking.
Surely, surely. Police is investigating the whole case. I don't know
Oh.
what kind of offense they did.
Hold
No,
on, hold on, hold
because
on. Let me get this straight, right? So you have a flagging campaign in Germany, and the
we
moment
don't have
someone,
anything. It was certain individuals. I don't know who it
oh, okay,
was.
fine.
Yeah, but they
So
did.
they hung flags what from lampposts,
Yeah, it must have been hundreds. I haven't seen pictures yet, but it must have been hundreds they put there into certain
and the
cities.
Secret Service was called.
No, it was you have it's called protection of the state. It's Department of the um, we have certain traditions in Germany. There are lots of different little police, and yeah, exactly. And they were called
I
in, and
can't believe
I
it.
think they had to remove most of them. Whoever did it, I think the city was removing then those flags. But you have to imagine that. I mean,
That's crazy.
what
And
is
we've
left
had
of these
some
states?
in the UK. We've had councils pulling them down, right? So in fact,
Yes.
I was sent some footage a couple of days ago by someone who is connected with the Bristol Patriots, who arranges the protests in
I
Bristol.
guess you won't
And
get into trouble if you put the LGBTIQ flag up there, huh?
oh, absolutely. Or the Palestinian flag. You know,
That
they're
maybe,
absolutely
maybe.
fine. They're
Yeah.
absolutely fine, but not the Union Jack or the Union flag or the England flag. If you put that up, apparently you're racist. And that, do you know, they're sending people out in South Gloucestershire, which is not far from where I am. They're sending people out at night between 1 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning, wearing full masks. So the council workers will wear a balaclava whilst they're going out and pulling down the flag of their own country. I just, it's one of the things that's really exposed the kind of left self hate, the self loathing that they have of their own
Are
country.
there are actually polls about that? Do you ask people what they think about that? Because there, I think you don't have like 50% supporting that. You might only have like 10 to 15% supporting it, no?
Do you know what? I actually haven't. Maybe I should have
That's
done
an
that before I came
interesting,
on.
that's a really
I have to
interesting
look
topic,
some
huh?
polling up. All I can tell you is that the flagging campaign in the UK is massive. You know, it's covered most cities. I mean, I live in a tiny part of the West Country, not far from Bristol, which is a very left wing part of the country that I live in, sadly. And they're all
Sorry,
over the
yeah.
place. All over the place. I've got roundabouts, little mini
Wonderful.
roundabouts with the England flag. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. But you've got deranged leftists walking round, pulling the flags down, saying that they're, you know, racist. You've got the council pulling them down. You even had the Prime Minister turning around, Keir Starmer turning around and saying to the public that using the flag to provoke is not the British way. We need to reclaim the flag. Like the left need to reclaim it. It's like
Exactly. We had similar
no
similar
one.
sentences in Germany. Yes.
Yeah, it's vile. I hate. Well, let's move on to immigration because this is probably the most important subject, certainly over here in the UK, and I imagine very hot topic in Germany. So, in the UK, like Germany, immigration is the most important topic for voters. Reform have launched a new immigration policy called Operation Restore Justice, and that consists of mass deportations of illegal migrants, scrapping what we call indefinite leave to remain, and I can explain that a little bit for you if you need to, and replacing it with 5-year renewable visas. They're also wanting to leave the European Court of Human Rights, and they're going to repeal and replace domestic legislation. Is this something that you think will work?
Well, when I hear that, replacing it with 5 years visa and stuff, what numbers are you talking about?
Well, there are best part of 1 million people that came to the UK in 2024, and I think the numbers are absolutely huge when it comes to right. The big thing about this is
No,
the
what would be the
indefinite.
consequence of that bill that you just quoted?
Oh, I see. I think Reform have said. I think it'd be up to 600,000. In fact, let me find that out while I'm talking. You carry on talking. Let me find that out. Reform mass deportations. They have been criticised. There you go. So 600,000.
Good.
Reform
Okay.
UK. Yeah, about 600,000.
Good. Okay. So in principle, we need to do something. I don't know how high your numbers in absolutely are, but I can tell you about the basic problems that might be similar for Germany and for the UK, and that is a suddenly dysfunctional welfare system. It goes down to
Correct.
hospitals, it goes to the psychologists, I don't know where, simple doctors as well. It leads to malfunction of our educational system. Now, you might argue if it wasn't malfunctioning before already, but it's definitely even worse now that you have so many foreigners in there. And in the end, you have also the problem that maybe you're living in a society you don't want to live in because you don't longer see that you are in the UK, in England, or in Germany because you just think you are in Kabul when you walk through certain streets, and that surely has with it the whole crime aspect as well, and the problem of being stabbed or being thrown in front of a subway or whatever. I guess these are also similarities we share. When I heard in London you got similar cases, we have them in Germany as well. You might get thrown in front of a subway. So I think it makes sense too. You use the word deport to all our German listeners. This is not the deport we talk about. It's rather, we call it remigration in German, you know? But it doesn't matter how we call it in the end, as long as we have effects, and we need to be hard and fast on all that. We've we've closed our eyes in front of the problems for too long that we couldn't act right now. We need to act right now. And that is on the one hand, reduce the pull factors. It's very clear if you come to my country, we call it once the butter and bread theory. You get butter and bread, and then we see if you're really a political refugee or not, or you just came here in order to have certain benefits from the system here. We can't afford it any longer. Those times are over. Luxury times are over. We're in hard times right now. We need to do something. So reduce the pull effects on the one thing. On the other hand, improve the push effects and throw the people out. Firstly, those who committed horrendous crimes, not only in your country, in mine as well. You have to see the rates, how they went up when we talk about rape, gang rape as well. That is phenomenon. We didn't have that far in that to such an extent in the past. Stabbings, something that is only in our statistics, I think, since 2020 or 2021. We didn't need to talk about it before because we just didn't have it. And these things also, when it comes to drug related crimes, think about the big cities like in Berlin, because sooner or later they want to have some money aside, then they typically enter the drug business too. So we need to act on two fronts, and that is first reduce reduce all the signs that attract people to come to our systems or to our societies. I don't see it in that case. And the second thing is be an example of how to push those out that obviously don't fit in here because they don't want to integrate and they want to make this country their country.
I completely agree with that. I mean, in the UK, there's two aspects to it which you've covered brilliantly. So I won't go into too much detail. It's the economic problem and the the cultural issue with it as well, and what the impact of very very fast mass migration to the UK and the impact it's had. Now, my view on it is very simple, and I think I share a lot of people share this same view. I do not have a problem with a economically active person moving to the UK, contributing to our society, making this place up. I don't care what colour
We don't
you
have a
are.
problem with that either. They always
Yeah,
say we have. We don't have that problem, really.
that's a
But
common
it's not
theme.
something we
Yeah.
need to talk about right now because right now our problems are different ones. Obviously, if somebody comes, wants to contribute to the society in various different ways, please be welcome. Yeah. But these
Yeah,
are not the people we're
absolutely. That
talking.
doesn't sound
They
very.
all
That doesn't sound very racist to me. And that's what As soon as you start talking about this, even from an economic point of view, they try and label you a racist. But we don't listen to that anymore. And I think a lot of people now are on board with this very simple principle of fairness and coming to the UK and contributing. Now, what Boris Johnson has done, we call this in the UK the Boris wave, and it could potentially cost our country over 200 billion quid. And what it is, he lowered the salary threshold to. He said, by the way, that he was going to increase the salary threshold to target higher skilled migration. Brilliant. Nobody had a problem with that, especially because he said he was going to bring down the overall numbers. So the idea was less immigration, and that immigration that was less was going to be skilled immigration. Now the exact
promise.
opposite
They
happened.
say one thing and they do another. No.
Exactly. The exact opposite happened. As soon as Boris Johnson won that election, he lowered the salary threshold and just opened the floodgates. And what that's led to is there's a whole. I mean, I was just looking at the numbers. We have plus 700,000 people. I think it's more than that now. I think it's over 1 million people who are not from the UK, so foreign nationals who are claiming universal credit, who are claiming benefit. It's
Yes.
absolute, and we're paying for it.
Yes.
Just to give you my own little, I used to play a lot of ice hockey when I was younger, and I wanted to stay in Canada. I went to Canada to play ice hockey. I found a job because I was on a student visa at the time. I wanted a working visa, so I found a job. Went to the Canadian embassy after getting a job at Subway with my letter from Subway, and they immediately told me that I wasn't able to work in Germany because, in Canada,
Canada.
because another a Canadian citizen could do that job.
Here we go.
Very
That was the old situation. Exactly.
exactly. Where's that gone? What's happened? And it's having a disastrous impact. And this is what reform are trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent. So very very soon, I think within the next couple of years, by 2029, the million or so people that came in from the Boris wave will be entitled to claim indefinite leave to remain, which is basically the same as citizenship. There will be a pathway to citizenship, but it means that they are allowed to stay in the country, they're allowed to claim benefits, they're allowed to basically just live off of the state, off of our goodwill. It's causing a complete and utter disaster in the UK, and I assume you're having a similar problem.
Exactly. We do have. And I'm sure you're called a person without heart as well, aren't you? You're a
So
heartless guy.
what's the AfD's immigration policy? Is it very similar?
It's more or less what I just depicted. I mean, obviously, they did some, they always call it reforms there. They did some reforms on the citizenship as well. Now that we had all the Syrian refugees in Germany, they reformed it in a way that you could get the German citizenship just after 3 years. Imagine that after
It's
3 years,
crazy.
it's absolutely ludicrous. And now
It,
we
citizenship means nothing.
That's the point. Yeah. To us, it means
Mm.
something because we are able to identify with the state and with our country and with our nation. We are putting flags out there, and those guys, they don't. They just hate everything that is us. They are not able to see that the world is not a good place, and that there are people out there who just want the best of you, and the best of you is always your money.
Well, it seems
So
to me it's another psychological way of breaking down those traditional barriers. If you're not a citizen of anything, why do
they
you need
don't
borders?
care. They don't care about borders. They don't care about
Yeah.
citizenships. For them, these are, I don't know, historical things and facts and words, and I don't know what. Now we realize that these values have a certain intrinsic value by themselves, that it's good to belong to a nation because you cover for each other, you take care for each other, you're close to each other. Do you seriously believe? There was a question I recently had when I was in Belgium, in Brussels. You had all those security guys from the metro line there. You know how they look, most of them? They have these long beards and stuff. They're going to pretend when how do you say that? When shit hits the fan, that these guys going to help you or the other one? I mean, I I hope it's not sounding too racist now, but that is really a question I ask myself. Where is everyone standing? And I mean,
Where do their
when
loyalties lie?
it's a question of loyalty in the end. I don't
It
know
is a
if
question.
lefties talk about loyalty too. I don't know if they still have that word in their repertoire, but
No,
that's in
probably
the
not.
end the question. Now, no, we're all talking about war with Russia. Yeah, let's
Mm.
rather talk about the possible war within, no?
And it's the deception behind it as well. I mean, we are having an issue over here in the UK. In fact, they've just literally, I can't believe they just voted this down, but we have been pushing, or the right have been pushing for crime statistics to be released that will list nationalities, so we can then make informed decisions. Because the left are like, why do you want to know this information? Well, we want to know this information so we can make informed decisions about who we allow into this country and who we don't allow into this country. But the Labour Party has just voted it down, so they are not going to release that data
What data is that about committed crimes in the
by
UK? Well,
nationality.
exactly. We
Yeah.
had that as well in Germany. It didn't work in the end because we had too many with double citizenships and too many who were suddenly showing up as Germans. Then we took a second step.
Ah.
You might directly go to the second step and we ask about their first names. It's much more effective.
Oh, I see. And that was so. So what you're saying is they released the data in Germany,
Yes,
but
they
it was
do. Yes, they
but
do.
it was too it was too skewed for you to make any
No, no, no,
head
no,
or
no.
tail
I
of it.
mean, even the police releases that data. We knew already a lot about it before. I mean, there is nothing to hide there. I mean,
And what does the data show? Does it show you what we expect to see? That so, for example, in the UK, we do have some statistics, and one of those statistics is Afghan nationals. So Afghan immigrants are 22 times more likely to commit sexual offences against women. That's a fact. That's a government statistic fact. Do you have that sort of data that's been
that sort of
released?
data, yes, we have it. Yeah, it's also there. You can read it up in the newspapers if you read the right newspapers. But there's no
What
consequence
impact is
from
that
that.
having?
It
Is it
just,
having
I
any
mean,
impact?
it has the impact, obviously, that we're now at 27% on federal level. Okay, that's one
Yeah,
impact. But in
that's
the
one
end, it
impact.
doesn't have the impact that the Greens go down to 3% or even less, where they actually belong to. Actually, they belong to history books and not into our parliaments. And well, that impact it hasn't had so far. I mean, I don't know. That's a different question, this suicidal tendency you have in these societies right now as well. You see, obviously, that children are harmed, that women are raped, that especially the vulnerable groups, you always talk, the lefty always talks about the vulnerable groups in society, that especially these groups are harmed right now, but what they are doing. Nonetheless, they don't act against that because it doesn't fit in their political concept. So, yeah, we shall see where it all ends up. But
Very, very
I
similar.
see a certain suicidal drive in there. Let's say it like that.
Completely. And of
Not
course,
in us.
they don't want us to know what's happening, because if we did, then everyone would be voting for the AfD and everyone would be voting for reform, and it would be game over, because that's part of it. It completely crashes their diversity is our strength. Diversity is not our strength. Diversity is our weakness. But anyway, I want to move on to the European Union and kind of globalism and media pressures that are happening over in Germany. So, AfD's manifesto floats a conditional Dexit. I would love to see you guys leave the European Union, because the whole thing would fall apart if you guys did. That's my personal opinion. But it's based on kind of if the EU reforms don't materialise, which we know that they won't materialise. So, with are you kind of pushing harder? Does the AfD truly want out, like Brexit, out of the European Union? How is that polling with Germans? Plus, what EU pushes, from migrant quotas to those, was it 78 billion euros worth of climate burdens? What's the Germans' position? What's the Germans' people positions on that? What's your position on that? Really, are you going to leave the European Union if you win an outright majority at the next election?
Okay, look, I wonder, nobody told you to take that question out, but okay, I'm gonna try it. So recently I've been to Hungary. It was, no, not recently, it was in April this year, and there were certain colleagues there from Fidesz, so the party of Viktor Orban. our discussion on that point as well, because Dexit is quite a hard weapon. You said it already. Then the whole construction here will
It would just
implode.
fall apart.
Also, the
Yeah.
building where I'm sitting in right now.
It would be a
So
glorious thing to see.
Viktor Orban said we try to reform the European Union from within because we really believe that we have a right-wing majority here pretty soon in the council as well. And you always think about the parliament, but it's actually more the council than the parliament itself. What we actually want to do is limit Brussels and limit the European Union. We wouldn't even call it European Union anymore to those fields where it really makes sense to collaborate. That might be trade, for example. And I have nothing against open borders, being able to go to France and get my cognac or whatever without being checked at the border, as long as the external borders work, you know. But I see no sense, and my party doesn't see any sense in having Brussels put their fingers into education. Ending up with the stuff we talked about it already, LGBTIQ and whatever, and early sexualization of kids and so on, education, defense, foreign politics. How should that work? I mean, we have completely different systems and interests here in Paris and Berlin. How should that go together? Media, you name it. I mean, there's a theory of bureaucracy that says that bureaucracies always have the tendency to blow themselves up more and more and to take more and more competences to themselves. And you see, I mean, you know everything. You had all the Brexit discussion. You saw all that. Uh, um, there with Ursula von der Leyen, with the Commission, and with Brussels itself. We don't want that. We want to work together. We want to peacefully collaborate, but we don't want a super institution. Don't want to wake up in the United States of Europe or something like that. We believe that the nation state is better able to cope with modern day problems and maybe also of future problems than the European Union is able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. What I think is troubling me slightly is, do you actually think deep down? Because I agree with you, by the way. If the European Union remained a trading bloc, we would not have left. We
Yeah,
would not have left.
I'm convinced. Yeah.
We'd still be members of the European Union because it serves a purpose and a good purpose of trade negotiation, trade relations. Absolutely no problem. I find them. You're going to know a hell of a lot more about this than me, but they are an extremely arrogant, totalitarian organisation. Do you honestly believe that I suppose Germany has more of a chance of changing it, but you've got what, say, 15 MEPs from the AfD. Is it about 90 MEPs that you have
Very
in
well
total?
informed. Yes, exactly. Very good.
So,
We stick
do
stick to
you?
those numbers.
Yeah, I was thinking so. Do you honestly believe that you can affect change in the European Parliament? What's the best outcome? I mean, if you do really well at the 2029 election, do you get more MEPs? Do you have a plan that you can affect change in the European? Because to me, it just sounds like a fairy tale. How are you going to do
N-
it? Or do you think it's
No.
possible?
Well, we started today with the global effects or the global threat we have there. Yeah, on all normal-minded people that comes from the left side, going from Argentina to the US to Europe and to Great Britain and Germany. And I think the battle we have there against these crazy people is a battle we have on various fronts. And we also have it in Brussels. And also in Brussels, we need to understand that we need to collaborate, we need to work together. I hope that Rassemblement National in France with Marine Le Pen comes up again, and even though they have a majority voting right as well, but that they get into power. I hope that Viktor Orban stays in power next year, and I hope that Italians come to mind and say, okay, we're going to work together. And obviously, if we see this really as common fight, I think we are able to succeed because it's not only on this horizontal level, taking up all these countries and different parties who need to understand that it's not the time of an ever greater Europe, it's the time of limiting, unfortunately, I have to say now, ourselves here, but I do it as European Union as well. That is already very helpful, but we need also the council on its side, that
I suppose
that
it.
means
I
the
suppose.
governments. And so we need a big change in Europe, and I feel it, and I feel it every day more. And that is why I was asking you before. I feel there is a change coming.
That is a slightly different dynamic. Actually, it's a good point you make because we may well have Marine Le Pen in France. I think we're almost certainly going to have Nigel Farage in the UK.
Yeah, that is.
We're going to have the AfD, probably largest, second. I don't know quite how that's going to materialise in your country, but we're going to have the AfD being a serious player at the next election.
If you have 1 more hour left, I mean, we can talk about that question as well.
But the whole situation in Europe is changing. Is that going to be the moment? Is that the moment that you're working towards, where you have Le Pen, Farage, AfD, Orban still in? Is that the moment when all of those countries are aligned that you then make your move on the European Union? Because I'm sure you know this better than most people. They're not going to let go. They are not going to let go without a
No.
fight, especially because of the gravy train, the amount of money that they earn, and the corruption within the European Union. Is that the goal? Are you waiting for that moment?
Well, there is no other option. I don't see another option right now because if I put that question right now into a democratic vote in Germany, I wouldn't know about the outcome. To be quite
True.
honest, we
Yeah.
talked about all that. The statistics are there. They know how dangerous migration is, yet they don't act. They know how bad the European Union is, and that actually it's not for our benefit, but to take your money, to rob your money. No, nonetheless, I'm not
So
sure
the
how they
German
would.
people. So the German people are still quite split on. So if you were to hold a referendum tomorrow, it could well be to remain in.
Remember how difficult it was in Great Britain, how close it was with the Brexit. You know, no, these people, they heard the same lies for decades. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to reform the European Union and limit its powers, that means that you're against Europe, and that means that you're pro-war, and that means that you don't want world peace, and I don't know what. You're a horrible person if you do try to reform Europe and sorry, I'm saying myself, the European Union and Brussels
Yeah.
and want to limit its powers. I mean, I see no option, no alternative to that strategy. It's not, by the way, it's not coming from us. It was Viktor Orban who started with it. It's also not a secret. We are also the last chance for the European Union because if we don't do it, if we don't try to reform that system, this system is going to implode within the next 10 to 15 years. I can promise you that.
So it's an interesting point that you've made actually, because I dislike the European Union so much. I just want them destroyed, just like the Conservative Party. But I do think you have a point that there is something to be said about a trading bloc. Nothing more, nothing political.
Exactly.
And if you believe that you can get the European Union back to being a trading bloc, I think the Brits would vote back in. I think we would come back
Absolutely.
in.
Yeah.
I think we would. Maybe that would be the argument to have. Anyway, I want to move on quickly because I appreciate we're pressed for time. Thank you so much for giving me so much stuff. I found this fascinating, by the way, so I hope you don't mind. Um,
Thank you, Lee. It was a
the
pleasure.
well, I want to just finish on asking about what your opinions are of what's happening in the UK, because I think this might be interesting
You still
for.
push it in there.
Um,
Okay. All right.
I know you might want to hesitate, but please do not hold back. So I don't know. Let me. What do you think of Keir Starmer? Do you know the man? Have you had any not personally, but do you know of him and what his ideology is
I
and the
guess if I
Labour
told you
Party as a whole?
I knew him personally, you would throw me out of the stadium. I don't. No, I don't
Same.
know him. And I don't need to know him personally. Why don't I need to know him personally? Because I know that kind of people. I've seen enough of these people. You know, I know that kind, and I can put them all into one box and can tell you exactly how they're going to behave. The fate of Keir Starmer, of his party, is not, responsibility, or is, let's say, the raison d'être, if you want to say it in French, of Keir Starmer and of his whole party is not Great Britain and the benefit of the country and the well-being of its people and stuff. It's being there in power and nurturing their families, friends, and all the groups they have around them. And these people, I've seen enough of them. You had in the 60s, 70s, I remember in Germany a case, a minister who stepped back from office because he was addressing a letter wrongly. You know, you had this honor kind of politicians once in the past. You don't have them anymore. And I don't want to say now publicly that I don't think Keir Starmer doesn't have honor. I don't say it would go too far. But I might at least doubt how honorable these people are, who we see in many, many governments right now all over Europe. And Keir Starmer, I'm afraid, is no exception from that. I do not believe that the politics he's doing is really for the benefit and sake of Great Britain. I think it's for the benefit of staying in power, of doing the minimum they need to be not thrown out of office by the people who sooner or later enter their offices there, come in there and pull them out by their hair because they say enough is enough. I mean, I don't know how far you are to that point in Great Britain. I heard various voices telling that there is this, maybe I don't know if that was fake news or whatever. Or it's too hard to say that. But is it really? Is there a threat of a civil war really in Great Britain, or is it for the moment still contained because you know that there is Nigel Farage there?
Do you know what? This is I do fear it. I really do fear that we could see something like that happen in the UK. I really hope not. But the thing that we're struggling with over here in the UK, again, it's very similar to what you guys are struggling with, is well, more than two things, but I would say, the visible things that people are struggling with is fairness, and that covers a lot of subjects. So you look at the illegal migration across the channel that's leading to crime hotspots around these migration hotels. We're having single mums being kicked out of
Yeah.
housing to make place for an HMO, a house of multiple occupancy. So, we're seeing lots and lots of cases for it. Now, there's one thing about the British people that I know: we are a tolerant bunch. But one thing that we cannot stand is our children being raped. And I'm seeing, I don't know if you're watching scenes happening over in Ireland at the moment. There's an
Yeah.
awful situation with a young girl, 10-year-old girl, being raped by a migrant who should have been deported. Now, there's going to be more of that in the UK because there is no answer to the illegal migration, which, by the way, is a small part of the demographic change in the UK. The illegal migration makes up what I think we're up to 50, 60,000 this year or something, the numbers are huge, but the bigger number is obviously legal migration. But if we are going to continually see are women being raped by illegal migrants? Are crime stats going down? Crime stats going up in areas around where illegal migrants are staying? If we're going to continue to see our women and children not be safe, and if we're going to see, single mums and families and British people being kicked out of housing to house illegal migrants, if that continues, well, to be honest, we already have had riots. The
Yeah.
Southport. I struggle to even talk about it because it is so horrific. What happened in Southport, where those three young girls were stabbed to death, that sparked off national riots. Now, I think I still think that flashpoint is there. I still believe that the flashpoint is there. So look, if you were to ask me whether I think it's going to happen, my answer would be probably not, and I hope not, but it's definitely there. There is definitely something in the background that I can sense that the British people have had enough. We are not going to put up with it for much longer. And what I'm hoping for is, as you rightly pointed out, because we've got someone like Farage there, who, by the way, is not perfect. Farage has flaws. Some people say he's not going far enough when it comes to immigration. He's not perfect by all means, but he is able to show a way out, and that way out is at the next election. Now, if Reform don't win that next election, and
Yeah.
somehow the uni party, as we call them, the Conservative and the Labour Party are the uni party because they basically have the same policies. If they are allowed to win the next election and have another 5 years, yes, I honestly, and nothing changes, then yes, I honestly believe that that's where we're headed.
You know, you have an invisible contract between you, the people, and the government. And the contract is I give you if you want my weapons and everything, by contrast, you protect me. I'm paying my taxes and you take your duties, you do
Yeah,
your
the social
duties.
contract.
And exactly, it's like a social contract. And it's not only British, but so the state doesn't keep that contract anymore. I think this is what we have to see as well. As you called it fairness before, and yes, it is a question of fairness as well, but it's again the question of loyalty. So why do you? It's just hypothetical questions I'm asking right now. But why would you keep your side of the contract and be loyal to a state that is disloyal to you and takes everything that is yours and gives it to others? I mean, Yeah, so we are at a very fundamental question of our societies. It's a very interesting, yeah, from different point of view, it's a very interesting time to, you know.
Well, this
But
is why I think it's absolutely imperative that reform win that next election. Otherwise,
absolutely,
I
so
think we
so
will.
that's what I wanted to say. Protect Nigel well, and I mean that also in a physical way, you know, because
Yeah.
eh,
Well, well, funny
well,
enough, the government has just reduced his security. So check this out, right? The government reduced his security by 75%, and the following week they went out and called him racist. So they reduced the security by 75%, and then when they announced when Reform announced their Operation Restore Justice immigration policy, the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, all went out into public and started calling both him and Reform racist and fascists. We still have a Green Party leader to this day calling the Reform Party fascists and
yeah,
Nazis.
yeah, okay, it doesn't matter.
It's crazy, but this is why it's just so important, because I honestly don't think that, probably the same with Germany. I don't think Germany or the UK or anyone struggling with this level of mass uncontrolled migration and illegal migration and all of the things that we've discussed on this podcast that happen as a result of that. I think that we will descend into something very, very dark. So I have faith. I really do have faith in the British people. I'm seeing the polls. I have faith in the German people. You know, I'm seeing the polls over there as well, and seeing how the AfD are doing well. I think, on balance, we will get out of this by voting our way out of it.
See, maybe we have a big problem here. Maybe we are still believing too much in democracy, and the others don't
Maybe,
anymore because they know that, you know. But
maybe. Although
I
I like
also
to.
see, otherwise I wouldn't be in job, you know. I would just stop being a politician, but I still believe that as well. I still think we can make a change and we can turn this ship around. It's difficult, but we can do it. And I
Well,
think,
as we were saying, you know, before we start recording, I am optimistic. I even though I am deeply, deeply depressed about the state of my country and what's happening here, I still remain optimistic because of the polling and how people's minds are changing. I do believe that the next 5 years, next 3 or 4 years, by the time we get to the 2029 election, is going to be the worst, probably 3 or 4 years of our lives. But once we get past that next election, it will be the start of real change, and it has to. It just has to be. It has to be.
keep my
Do-
tongue
do-
stressed. And don't forget, yeah, it's a common cause and a common fight here. I think
Can I
we're
just
starting
ask
to start it with that way.
one last question, because I
Oh,
appreciate
good
we've got
Lord, now you
one
have to
very,
pay.
very quick last.
That costs extra. Yeah.
There, there is there's a small debate. It's not as much now, but in the UK, we used to have, before reform started doing very well in the polls, calling for kind of a proportional representation
Ah,
system in the UK. Now, I'm against this. I don't like your system in Germany. I don't like it. It ends up in the situation where you're in, where kind of a democratically elected party just gets completely pushed out of power, and the people who vote for it, there's a kind of democratic deficit. What are your views on our first past the post system? Would you like that in Germany, or are you quite happy with your system?
Help,
Tell me about it.
help me again. Where do you see the democratic deficit in the system? Because
In your system.
the firewall is not a problem of the system. It's a problem of individual thinkers or so-called thinkers and decision makers inside parties. It is not a system inherent problem. You know that you have the CDU there who says we will never go together with the AfD. We don't vote together with them. It's not a problem of the system by itself. I mean, you have a threshold. Yeah, that's correct. That's 5% in order to make it into a federal into a federal parliament, for example. But if I look at France, and I've been looking at France for a long time, if I look at Great Britain, and I see that there is just, I don't know, up to 49, up to 50% of voters, and sometimes even more, who are not represented in the parliament, I think that is a huge misrepresentation of the people, isn't it?
Okay, flip side of that, you are the largest party at the next election. I'm a German voter. I have voted for
Yeah.
the AfD. My party wins the election. And then, because of the system that's set up in Parliament, none of the things that I have voted for, none of the manifesto that I voted for, is implemented because the other parties block it. That is a democratic deficit right there.
Nonetheless, you might be part of 32% of German voters who voted for the AfD and made it the front runner of the party, of the elections. But I might be one of 48%, even more in Great Britain, who has the same problem. So we might
Well,
go
I
for a
suppose
drink afterwards. But I mean,
I suppose the argument is I don't want, if I vote for the AfD or if I vote for reform, I don't want them to dilute their manifesto down to do business with socialists. I
I
don't want that.
yes,
I
and
want I want
that would be the only benefit of your system. And nonetheless, you don't have that benefit right now. No?
well, I mean, the Labour Party definitely have that benefit right now. They were voted in, to be fair, as the largest party, and they are gifted the opportunity to
Of
implement their
not making
entire manifesto.
compromises. Yeah, promise you one thing: we will not come to a conclusion because you have those two concurring systems. And I mean, I'm more a fan of a representative system as we have it in Germany right now. I even think the German system, in comparison to if I think about Italy, for example, or Austria, is quite a fair system even. But you need honorable people to execute that system, and there we are, the basic problem of both our countries.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just not going to matter. I just think that if the people vote for a party and that party gets the most votes out of all the parties, that party should be allowed to govern by themselves, and that allows because otherwise, I just think it would if I went campaigning for the Conservatives. So I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll give you a very good example because it has happened in the UK. When I first got into politics, I'm a little bit older than you, believe it or not. I
Yeah,
got into politics.
I realized you saw that as a compliment before. Good, good.
When I got into politics, it was around 2010, and I helped the Liberal Democrats. I was a Liberal Democrat. I was more on the sort of what I would view the centre left, although it isn't now, but it was back then. I campaigned for the Liberal Democrats to scrap tuition fees. Now, when the 2010 election happened, there was no outright majority. So there had to be a coalition government, and the Conservatives went into coalition with the Liberal Democrats. So the Liberal Democrats got some ministers in Parliament, but they were not allowed to implement, obviously, because they didn't win the election, they were not allowed to implement half their policies. But I went back to the doorstep because I was canvassing, I was talking to people about voting to Lib Dems. People had put their trust in me. They'd voted for the Liberal Democrats because they wanted to scrap tuition fees. Now, the Liberal Democrats effectively got ministers in that government because of a coalition. Then they had to scrap their promise to scrap tuition fees. And the Liberal Democrats were absolutely annihilated for that. They still, to this day, haven't really lived that down. So in my view, without a first past the post system, you dilute democracy to the point where the people who vote for it are not getting what they vote for. So what's the point of voting? You know, what's the bloody point? If I'm not gonna, even if my party wins the election, I might not even get what they voted for. At least in the UK, and agree, I know politicians lie. Don't get me wrong, but at least in the UK, if a party says they're going to do this in their manifesto and they get elected, we know that that's what they've got to do. They've got no other influences depending on the size of the majority, and that party gets a chance to implement that manifesto. It doesn't seem like that's the case in any other system.
And well, not even in Great Britain, if you ask me. But yes,
No, you have
in
a fair
theory, you're
point.
absolutely right. Yeah, what can I
You have
say?
a fair point
In
about,
theory, right, but problem or the enemy of the good guy is the guy with a good intention, and you had lots of people with good intentions in your case of a long history and decades and hundreds of years developing system. Well, and I think they never thought of that kind of generation of politicians we have right now, who are not, I don't know, who are not doing politics for doing realpolitik, but for I don't know, fulfilling some I don't know, some utopian dream. I don't know it, and in the end that doesn't matter right now. We need to get rid of these guys. We need to take them out of power, and we need to be able to do politics for our own sakes, for our people, and no matter about the voting system.
so
I
how does that
clearly
look?
I don't know how to finish that now, but I tell you honestly, in 1 hour we will still discussing about the shape of your constituencies and stuff. I
Yeah.
forgot the formal word for it now. If you can help me on that one, but it's an English word, isn't it?
Constituency, that's correct.
Yes, but if you reshape the form of the
The
constituency,
boundaries.
yes, exactly. If you reshape it in order to have a majority in that constituency, it has a British word. Maybe the guy who's watching right now can send me that via
Okay,
WhatsApp.
I see what you mean.
Doesn't
Look,
matter.
there are. I do
So there are ways
accept.
to manipulate that even more, you know, and
Yeah.
both systems are not flawless. Yes, surely
No,
not.
I agree. I agree. I suppose the only thing to say is that if you did have a first past the post system in Germany, at the next election you'd have outright control.
No, we wouldn't. Because we have, apart from that, a federal system, and then you still need to have majorities in each of the states. I
Ah,
know now
okay,
it gets
fine.
even more complicated,
That
but
is
that is
complicated.
the
Yeah.
big problem. When people now come in Germany, they say, wonderful, when we come into power, we're going to do it like Trump, like Millet there. And it's going to be one. No, it won't be because Millet and Trump, they have presidential, semi-presidential systems there. We don't have that. It's a federal system where you have uh, overlapping powers at times, or you have different power attributions and competences on a federal and on state level, and that makes it even more complicated. But it doesn't
Mm.
matter; it doesn't stop us. We keep going, and as you know it, now in one state we are even up to more than 40% right now, Saxony-Anhalt.
It's a fascinating conversation. Like you say, we could probably do another whole hour just on the voting systems.
Please, not
But
people get bored.
yeah, totally, totally. I wouldn't because we're geeks. But there you go. But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Genuinely, very fascinating conversation about the parallels between the UK and the Germans, especially. The British people will, certainly I have now, will have the German people in my mind a lot more after speaking to you. And I wish you well at the next election.
Thank you very much. My next election will be in 2029, so I still get some time. But until then, I'm going to help my colleagues in Germany. I wish you all the best in Great Britain. You can make a difference. You can turn the ship around. You're going to do it. I believe in you. I hope I'll be able to come over often and to meet Nigel again and stuff. And maybe we meet again for that occasion.
I hope that happens too. Here's to 2029.
Yes.